In this video, we'll work on creating variables within a Web Intelligence report. In order to create a variable, we can simply go in and select the Create Variable button within Web Intelligence. There are a couple of different components of creating variables. The first is that we need to define the variable and provide a name for the specific variable that we're trying to create. In this particular case, we're just going to call this a test variable. A variable can be a number of different things, but typically what a variable, or why you would create a variable, would be to do a calculation or create a calculation within a report, or to combine data elements within a report, or to manipulate some of the existing data that already exists in a report. And so we do this because maybe the element or the data that we need may exist in some part within the queries the data that's been returned from our queries. But let's say that we need to concatenate a couple of data elements together, or we need to only get a particular, we have a date field and we only want to show the day. So there are many different types of reasons why you would create a variable, and we'll walk through a couple of those right now. But the creation of the variable itself is that we need to select or type in the name, and then we need to select the type of variable that we're creating. So there are three types of variables, and they signify that as a qualification. One is called a dimension object, a measure, and a detail. And generally speaking, dimensions are data that would be non-numerical, so things like strings or descriptions, names, things of that nature. Whereas a measure would be more related to a calculation, something like sales or order quantity or profitability. So measurable data elements. Details are simply further classifications of an existing dimension. Although there is very few times that you'll actually use detail objects when creating a variable. They can simply be created as dimensions if you need to. So once we select the type of the qualification, and then we can go down and start working with the formula. So once again, you can create many different types of formulas, and the formula is really the code, if you will, that allows us to create a variable. So I'm going to provide an example, and so let's say that I want to grab, when I'm looking at plant, I want to only grab the first 10 characters in that plant, and that's what I want to display on my report. So how would I go about doing that? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is that I need to basically define my formula as a plant. So what I can do is I can go down here and double click on plant, and you'll see that it automatically places plant into the formula. So right now my test variable is going to return basically this equal sign equals plant, and in those brackets plant would refer to an object, and in this case that dimension object. But now we want to go through and only get the first 10 characters of plant. So now I can go into my functions section and start expanding and trying to figure out how I would get the first 10 characters. So if I kind of look through all of the functions that are available to me, and you'll notice that there is, in one particular case, a group of functions that are specifically designated for characters. So as I expand that, then I notice there are a number of formulas that are down below. So if I look and I click on each of these formulas, you'll notice that in the description will tell you more about that particular function and what it's capable of doing. If you need more information, there is a button on the lower right hand corner if you click on that will bring up another help menu that will once again talk specifically about that particular function, the syntax of that function, and what you have to put into that function to get it to work correctly, and also provide you with an example. So now I want to find the function that's going to allow me to return the first 10 characters. Now I happen to know that the function that I need to use is going to be what's called the left. So I want to take the leftmost set of characters of my plant. So if I look down below and it says returns the leftmost characters of a string, so I know that if I click on left, now within that I also know that I need to provide a string. Well, the string that I want to provide is plant. So I'm going to delete plant. I'm going to put my cursor right in within those parentheses and then double click on plant. So now I know that it's going to return the left of the object plant, but then I need to specify, based upon the description down below, the number of characters that I want returned. So I simply follow along with the text down below, and after the string, which now is my plant, I can put a semicolon in, and now I need to specify the number of characters. And since I only want to return the leftmost 10 characters, I'll simply type in the number 10, and then I can go and validate my formula to make sure that I've coded that formula for that variable correctly. So if I select that and click the check marks, you'll notice that down below it says the formula is correct. So now I've walked through creating a variable. Now I click OK. Once I click OK, the variable is then created. And you'll notice now in the available objects section of the report, you'll see a folder called variables, and you'll see that test variable is now available for me to use. In order to use any variable, you use them just like any other object in the report. You can simply drag and drop them into the report. And now you'll notice as this comes through, it will only return the first 10 characters of the plant. So I have successfully created a variable in Business Objects Web Intelligence. I will go back in very quickly to discuss some of the functions that are here. So there are functions around aggregation. So things like summing and averaging, counting, doing medium, doing maximum and minimum, running counts, running averages, running sum, standard deviation. Within characters and strings, we can do things like concatenating characters and strings together. We can do formatting of character strings to turn them into dates. We can encode them in HTML. We can trim or pad characters in front or in between or behind other character strings. We can do a replace. So let's say that if we wanted to replace all the periods that are in a particular string, we could replace them with something else. There are formulas for data providers. There are formulas for date and time. So if you have a particular date and you want to know what the day number of the month is, you could specify, you could use that formula and then put a date in the parentheses, and it would return the day number of that particular month that you're in. So there are many different date functions that are here. There are many different predefined document functions. There are logical functions. So if something is even or is odd, or if you want to check to see if something is a date, these would return binary numbers, a 1 or a 0, or a true or a false, if you will. And there are a number of miscellaneous functions as well. Don't forget about numeric functions, so things like absolute values, cosines, logarithmic, ranking, rounding, sine, square root, etc. And when you look at data from BW and you have hierarchies, you have functions for data sets. So we look at ancestors and children, descendants, parents, and we can write functions around that.